I said, I am Ashana Adhikari from South Chapter, Nepal, and we have...
And I'm Melissa Mejia Flores, an additional representative of New Humanity International NGO. And we welcome you all to this wonderful event today. And what is this all about? As following the recommendation of the International Conference of NGOs to support initiatives in the framework of the 75th anniversary of the creation of UNESCO, the Liaison Committee decided that the best way to celebrate 75 years of UNESCO's action was to go beyond a simple celebration and use the opportunity to call all NGOs in official partnership to put a stronger focus on youth that are at the center of their operations.
On July 12, 60 delegates from all around the world met for the first time and multiple times after that, culminating in the creation of the position paper that we'll present today. The underlying idea behind the formulation and launch of this position paper is to create synergies among the youth for meaningful change in the world. To this end, we have arranged a gather town session to give to all NGOs in official partnership a space for exchange and discussion. This will be an opportunity to meet the people who have actively participated in the process.
Yeah, we remind you that the instructions to access the Gather Town session have already been shared via email with all NGOs in official partnership, and also with all the group of youth people who accompany the process. You can check your emails with the sender ngo.unesco.org. And the Gather Town event shall be running from now until 5 p.m. Central European time, and you can access it at any time. So if we are all here today, it is because we share the same questions and horizons. How can we, as young people in our organizations, make an impact in the fields of education, culture, and science? What are the challenges we face? What motivate us to lead the way for future generations? We ask you to highlight our broad collective vision for the future role of youth in this endeavor. So we face and reaffirm the goals outlined in the position paper. We would like to thank Alexander Galliano from the International Astronomical Union for coordinating the production of the next video.
We, the junior representatives of NGOs in formal partnership with UNESCO, foster change every day in education, science, and culture around the world. Let's see what some of our junior members have to say.
I'm a junior member of the World Federation of Scientific Workers, and I believe that science should be accessible to all.
In my organization, junior members have the most challenging questions.
Kaixo, Eba naiz, UNESCO etzeko lankide gaztea, eta uste dut gizarteko pertsona anitzak elkartuz munduko eraldaketa lor dezakegula, guztiok batera.
As junior members, we take observations and develop software to enable groundbreaking discoveries.
I'm a junior member, and I believe that words are key to share knowledge and ideas and to take action against inequalities.
എൻ്റെ സംഘടനയിലെ ഒരു യുവപ്രതിനിധി എന്ന നിലയിൽ രാജ്യത്തിന്റെ വാസ്തുവിദ്യാ പൈതൃകം സംരക്ഷിക്കുന്നതിലും രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നതിലും സുസ്ഥിര സംരക്ഷണത്തിനുള്ള പദ്ധതികൾ ആവിഷ്കരിക്കുന്നതിലും ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ പങ്ക് നിർവഹിക്കും.
ನನ್ನ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಯುವ ಪ್ರತಿನಿಧಿಯಾಗಿ ನನ್ನ ದೇಶದ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಿಲ್ಪದ ಪರಂಪರೆಯನ್ನು ಸಂರಕ್ಷಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ದಾಖಲಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ಸುಸ್ಥಿರವಾಗಿ ಸಂರಕ್ಷಿಸುವ ವಿಧಾನಗಳನ್ನು ರೂಪಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನು ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸುತ್ತೇನೆ.
Bonjour, je suis Zelda Emeline Efiri, affiliée Arterial Network Pointe-Noire Congo. Dans notre structure, je travaille comme assistante administrative et comptable et je suis animatrice d'un point lecture jeune public. Je reçois donc les jeunes et enfants du quartier, scolarisés et non scolarisés, pour des moments de lecture. Et au-delà de ça, nous faisons quelques activités autour du livre, l'épellation, la formation des mots, l'incitation et l'initiation à la lecture, en donnant à chacun la possibilité de faire une lecture ouverte. Et ces activités me permettent de découvrir ces enfants et leurs lacunes afin de leur apprendre et de leur donner le goût de la lecture. Aussi, dans la motivation pour le développement de l'éducation artistique au bénéfice de ces jeunes et enfants, nous invitons des artistes professionnels pour des moments d'initiation artistique afin de donner l'opportunité et initier ces jeunes et enfants au métier des arts. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'avoir cette opportunité de participer à cet événement organisé par l'UNESCO. Donc le but est d'encourager la participation et le leadership des jeunes au sein des organisations. Je suis prête et encore très fière de prendre des responsabilités, de m'engager en tant qu'acteur de changement et d'être parmi les leaders de demain. Merci.
大家好，我叫韩玉，我在中国远程参与了 Institute of Afro-European Cultures in Paris 的青年实习，在那里接受了跨文化的培训。现如今，大家很信任我，我也作为项目的领导，负责跨文化指南的项目，让在华的非洲学生更好地融入到中国的社会。通过这个项目，我们在实践案例中提供建议，我们解释了中国与非洲学生之间的差异，也解释了他们的共同之处。整个手册呢是由图画以及案例贯穿始终的。
In ISTA, we shape the future of youth by giving them the skills they need for the job market and facilitate opportunities for rising engineering and science leaders from more than 80 countries to accelerate sustainable development. Being a board member of ISTA allows an equal voice among more senior members of our association and an exchange of ideas and knowledge for the benefit of ISTA. By working collaboratively with our members in a truly international environment, we bring innovation to decision-making and foster mutual understanding and learning. I am proud to be supporting youth from all socio-economic backgrounds to access professional opportunities and learn to apply hard skills in real-world environments while growing their cultural competency and learning critical soft skills. Together with universities and companies, we help prepare the next generation of tech students to face complex problems and to explore pathways of leadership in their workplaces, communities, nations, and in the global society. ISA is 75 years young, and I accept the challenge to bring fresh perspectives to connecting young leaders to their possibilities worldwide. It's our world now. Let's shape its future.
Hello, this is Ayushi Kundu representing Soroptimist International. In my experience as a young member and leader of a service organization with a dominant global presence, I have observed that despite prolific potential, dynamic ideas, and a zest to change the world, the youth are often hesitant when it comes to their turn. That is the reason why this position paper is so important. It highlights the frictions we face as young advocates and makes recommendations on how young members in every organization and otherwise can be given space and a ground to stand on by the leaders of today so that we can become leaders and change makers of tomorrow. We sincerely hope that you will recognize our efforts by adopting and implementing these recommendations. Thank you so much.
Namaste everyone, I'm Ashana Adhikari from Nepal, and I believe that UNESCO NGO policy paper is important as young people around the world have come up with their organizational and country voices that needs to be heard. And the policy paper will lead to strategies to advocate inside and outside NGOs with their constituents and help bring about visible difference. As I believe collective experiences are always greater than the individual, and united voices are more powerful.
Hi. Around the world, youth contributing to the work of social movements and organizations continues to be an integral part of creating meaningful social change. Not only do the youth represent the next generation of leaders, but they are also the drivers of new ideas and organizing tactics that are relevant to the contemporary times. The youth are increasingly employing more creative modes of activism and social work, and coupled with burgeoning international connectivity, the essence of social organizations and movements has evolved. Today we see a more international, intersectional, and integrative social consciousness around the world. What is sometimes, however, missing is a capacity to amplify and strengthen these youth voices. My vision for the involvement of youth in NGOs and movements includes more non-tokenistic leadership roles for the youth, capacity building and intergenerational dialogue, as well as creating safe spaces for dialogue among the youth for creative problem solving of social and cultural conundrums that our world faces.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Alexandra Stroy et je travaille au sein de la Fédération européenne des écoles. Je vous adresse aujourd'hui la parole, non pas seulement parce que j'ai eu la chance de participer à des échanges visant à partager notre vision sur l'engagement des jeunes. Non pas seulement parce que je fais partie des jeunes qui souhaitent s'engager et créer un changement positif et durable. Non, je vous adresse aujourd'hui la parole parce qu'on m'en a donné l'opportunité. Tenter, échouer, réessayer, réussir, apprendre, prendre responsabilité, changer, construire, participer, s'engager. Tout cela est impossible pour les jeunes d'aujourd'hui si on ne leur donne pas l'opportunité. Outre la motivation et les compétences, les jeunes ont besoin d'opportunités pour devenir des vrais leaders citoyens. Non seulement l'opportunité de prendre la parole, mais aussi l'opportunité d'agir.
Wow, that was such a wonderful video. I was motivated before watching this video. I think after watching this video, everyone else is as much as motivated as I am right now. But without any further ado, we would like to give the floor to David Grosso, Chair of the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee and of International Conference of NGOs, to give his introductory remarks. Over to you, Mr. Grosso.
Thank you, Ashi. Well, as you said, it's really great to see this video, and I'm really proud to be here today to witness the result of such incredible and much needed process. Our mission at the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee is to represent, as of today, 406 NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, defending their interest and anchoring our activities with UNESCO programs and priorities. So somebody asked this before, so why are we here today? As you may know, the 2020 International Conference of NGOs recommended to the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee to support, in cooperation with UNESCO sectors, initiatives in the frameworks of the 75th anniversary of the creation of UNESCO, allowing to mobilize young people and to promote NGOs' activities since its creation. Taking this into account, the Liaison Committee decided that the best way to celebrate 75 years of UNESCO action was to go beyond a simple celebration and use this opportunity to call all NGOs in official partnership to put a stronger focus on youth, not just on their speeches or in their statement, but at the very center of their operations. This is because, even if it can seem obvious to many, young people are not the future, they are the present. And let me just share some personal experience on this. I arrived at the NGO I worked for as a young intern 9 years ago. I was young then. And now I'm grateful for how my colleagues at the office, as well as the members of the executive board, have created that environment that has enabled me to grow as a professional. Actually, the very fact that I'm here today as chairperson of the Liaison Committee is thanks to those people around me who have understood how important it is to leave space to young people, consider them an asset and investing on them. And without turning this into a battle between generations, as our elders are and should be part of the process, part of a constant intergenerational dialogue. In fact, for too long, the attitude has been to talk about youth or give young people the floor only when talking about youth initiatives. And that's why we, as Liaison Committee, decided to give you the floor, leaving the space, a safe space, to meet and discuss about your challenges, your dreams, a safe space to elaborate and to tell us what do you need to flourish as professionals and as human beings. That space has produced the document that we are about to present, which you will understand contains concrete and specific actions that these young people demand. We have already around 50 organizations who have endorsed the position paper, and I take this opportunity to call all NGOs interested to sign it on the Liaison Committee website. At the same time, I also hope that NGOs that have already signed it, they will start acting and following the recommendation it contains right now. Let me finish by thanking all the NGOs that have taken these issues seriously and have appointed a young representative for this process. And of course, all the people involved for their energy and their commitment. You can see some of them are here today, but I'd like to highlight that all of them, all of those who have worked since the very beginning, sometimes in the backstage, were and still are instrumental for this process. A special thank goes to my colleagues on the Liaison Committee and especially to Thais Queiroz, who has followed this entire process. And I really hope that this will be a starting point for this new generation of NGOs representatives to take really the lead and be an active part of the collective cooperation between NGOs and UNESCO. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Grosso, for such insightful remark. I very much agree that young people are the present, and thank you so much for giving us the space to be here as well. Now, it's time that we all are waiting for. It's a pleasure for us to give the floor to Dr. Mrityunjay Guha Majumdar, Youth Ambassador of Ramakrishna Mission, and Ms. Ayushi Kundu, Soroptimist, International Youth Representative, to present the position paper. But before handing them the floor, I would like to introduce them a little. Dr. Mrityunjay is a senior postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Excellence in Quantum Technology, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He pursued his PhD in physics from Cambridge University before moving on to pursue research in quantum physics in the UK and India. He likes to be called a student of science, society, and sensibilities, and he is a prolific writer and commenter on social, political, philosophical, and scientific topics. Among many others, he has recently worked with the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, on best practices in teaching and learning, besides also being a 35 under 35 UK-India Young Leader 2018. He was showcased by UNESCO in the documentary for the Convention on Higher Education in 2019. And Ms. Ayushi Kundu is a lawyer currently working as an advocate at the Calcutta High Court in India and a second-generation soroptimist. She pursued an LLM in human rights, focusing on human rights of women and international child law. She is committed to serve society and secure the rights of people through law, knowledge, and social activism, and hopes to use her life to make a difference in the lives of others. We would like to express our humble gratitude to both of them for developing the first version of this paper and leading to its drafting process. Their contribution has been extremely important to remind us that as youths, we have the potential to be the change makers and leaders of tomorrow. We have the ingenuity, the potential, and the capacity to make meaningful change happen for ourselves, for our communities, and for the world at large. Hence, we should keep standing in our belief and causes, with courage, pride, and ability. Over to you guys.
Thanks a lot, Ashiana, for that very generous introduction and kind words. I would like to present the paper itself. So firstly, namaste and welcome to the presentation of the position paper on youth and advocacy by the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee. It is my great pleasure that I am here today to present the paper with my colleague, Ms. Ayushi Kundu. As Ashiana was mentioning, we have worked on this for a few months now, and this is the result of that cumulative process, so to say. Is the screen being shared? Right, sorry, yeah. Right, so I'd like to begin with a beautiful quote by Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi, who mentioned that the power of youth is the common wealth for the entire world. The faces of young people are the faces of our past, our present, and our future. No segment in the society can match with the power, idealism, enthusiasm, and the courage of young people. And it is this spirit, this essence, this idea of the youth and the harnessing of the potential of the youth for the betterment of the world that we stand here today to represent. Two of the cases that come to mind, among so many others, which were things that we wanted to showcase, included one which was of Prithviraj, a college-going boy from India, who recently realized the difficulties faced by slum dwellers not far from his college, and took up the initiative with some of his friends to start a kindness wall, where people could donate old clothes on the hangers and into cartons that they had put up. They would distribute these clothes in the slum every weekend. The team soon grew to 110 members, and today it's a self-sustained NGO which has donated a number of thousands of clothes to various old age homes, slums, and orphanages. Another case that comes to mind is that of Praveni Mebrahtu, a 13-year-old girl in Ethiopia. She faced the stigma or the shame associated with menstruation in her country. And it is very unfortunate that girls in Ethiopia are often married off after their first period. With no access to sanitary pads, many of the girls drop out of school. And so while being in the US, Mebrahtu designed a reusable pad for women back home in 2005. She eventually built a factory, which is called the Meriam Seba Sanitary Products Factory, which produces 750,000 pads annually. They have been working closely with an NGO named Dignity Period, which has organized various activities for information dissemination and awareness building, having worked with close to 3 lakh students. These are just two of various other instances and examples where the youth have used their talent set, their expertise, and their enthusiasm, most of all, to bring about positive, constructive, and meaningful social change. So in this position paper that we wanted to bring together with the consultations with various representatives from myriad organizations across the world, the vision that we had, as I've mentioned here, is that young people have the potential and an increasingly important role to play through advocacy and intervention for achieving meaningful change and progress in educational, scientific, social, and cultural avenues. as change makers and leaders of tomorrow, as there is an urgent need to create more space and opportunities for them to contribute to decision-making through non-tokenistic, and this is what I would like to highlight here, the non-tokenistic part of it, which we will elaborate on later as well, non-tokenistic leadership roles and global youth mobilization within NGOs and beyond. So to begin with, the very first natural basis for looking at the problem of that the world faces and what are the strategies that we move forward with when it comes to addressing them involves the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations brought forth in 2015 to call for ending poverty, to protect the planet, and ensure that people across the world enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. To achieve these goals, young people not only have had the right to a voice, but also disparate platforms to advocate for causes they believe in and network with individuals they relate to. The world in its present circumstances faces a number of challenges that are emerging, as well as we find that older ones are changing in their forms to thereby present difficulties over and above any mitigation strategies that may be utilized against them. These challenges include those of climate change, resource depletion, poverty, malnutrition, illiteracy, conflict as well, and inequalities of various kinds, depending on identities and even intersectional oppression and inequalities as such. So the first question which comes to mind is, what are we doing about this, right? So we have a number of different stakeholders who are working together, be it the governments, be it civil society stakeholders, but of course, one aspect or one critical stakeholder in all of this is that of the non-governmental organizations. So what is a non-governmental organization? In the United Nations Charter, in Article 71 to be precise, it is mentioned that there are arrangements for consultation with non-governmental organizations which are concerned with matters within its competence. The first delineation or definition of the non-governmental organization comes in the Resolution 288X of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, where it says that any international organization that is not founded by an international treaty should be regarded as a non-governmental organization for the purposes of the activities of the ECOSOC. The UN Department of Global Communication says that these are not-for-profit voluntary citizens group that are organized on local, national, and international levels. So this is a small, a representation, a map, which is developed for the number of organizations that are working currently within the fold that we call as non-governmental organizations. They have been implementers, catalysts, and partners around the world, and have looked at both operational and advocacy-related issues. In all of this, the youth are preeminent and very important for the operations of various organizations that we see around the world today. But the first question is, who is a youth? The United Nations defines the youth as individuals aged between 15 and 24, although this definition is flexible. So youth has been regarded as a rather fluid category, with the experience of being young varying substantially across the world between regions, nations, cultures, social contexts, and various other parameters according to which one can define the idea of youth. And therefore, context is always an important element in one's definition of youth. One of the things that is obviously universal across the board, and which is the very premise on which we have established our position paper, is put very succinctly and wittily, might I add, by Helen Keller, when she says, "It is not possible for civilization to flow backward while there is youth in the world. Youth may be headstrong, but it will advance its allotted length as such." So that is the spirit with which we come forward with this position paper today. This contextual approach that I was mentioning previously is very important to engage with and encourage the youth participation and mobilization in various organizations. Just to quickly highlight some of the ways in which we can look at how the youth are faring in various parts of the world, and why is this important? This is important because activists, policymakers, and organizations, and various other stakeholders can use the insights from this information, from this understanding, to formulate various strategies to advance the interests and the welfare of youth, and in the process also involve them in the greater advancement of humanity as such, with various social pursuits and organizational work. One of the comprehensive indices to do this is that of the Youth Progress Index, which is the most comprehensive measure of the quality of life of young people in 150 countries around the world. And so as you can see here, there are various different nations, and there's an entire distribution in the manner in which the social progress tier can be defined. And this has actively been used by various organizations to advance the interests of the youth and in the process of humanity as well. So quickly, to succinctly and briefly put the various factual aspects of this this area of work, this understanding of the young people, I think it is very important to look at the estimates of how many young people do we actually have in the world today. So the number of young people between the ages of 15 and 24, as per this World Youth Report that was released, I'm sorry, there's a World Youth Report that was released by the United Nations, number about 1.21 billion and account for 15.5% of the global population. Projections suggest that it will increase to 1.29 billion and 1.34 billion in 2030 and 50 respectively. You may see that the percentages are actually lessening, and that is probably because the proportion will be lesser, but the total number of people who will increase by those years will be significant. And therefore, the United Nations release gives us these projections. And with an average growth of 2.3% annually, there's also a certain kind of disparity or distribution with respect to the least developed countries, as against the ones that are more advanced, the rest of the world per se. And we see that the average growth is slightly higher in the least developed countries, as per the United Nations release in 2019. Now, what is very important here is the last bullet point thereof, which mentions about the number of NEET or not in education, employment, or training rates for youth worldwide. Why is this important? It is important because we see that there is a large resource pool, a human resource, which we have in the world and which will be burgeoning, which will be increasing and expanding over time. And yet there is a glaring inadequacy in the manner in which we harness the various resources that are available to nations and to humanity at large. And therefore, it is critical that we bring about the talent, the enthusiasm, and the various skill sets of the youth into meaningful social work and movements beyond the employment generation that is also very important, but particularly for bringing forth an advancement of humanity as such, this resource pool can be critical and very, very important. Ayushi?
Thank you, Mrityunjay. Namaste, I'm Ayushi, and I'm delighted to be able to present this position paper along with my colleague, Dr. Mrityunjay Guha Mazumdar. More than half of the world's population is under the age of 30 years. While young people have every opportunity and the right to participate fully in the lives of their societies, they are often left on society's margins. As a group, they are affected by discrimination and lack of access not only to employment and education, but also to decision-making processes that define the course of their future. In the words of Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, any society that does not succeed in tapping into the energy and creativity of its youth will be left behind. In the past, access to opportunities and leadership positions and experiences for the youth in various non-governmental organizations and social movements have been limited. Young leaders can help in building on their individual and organizational values and processes and establish effective modes of contributing to the operations of their organizations. Young people are creating change everywhere we look. Some of them dedicate everything they have to tackle the most pressing issues of our time. It is their work and way of life. They are change makers, activists, social innovators, disruptors, dreamers, doers, people who believe social and environmental change is possible. In the Possibilist study, driven by the desire to better understand the lives and realities of young change makers, conducted in 2021 by an alliance of 16 of the world's leading youth social innovation networks, some of the key findings were 95% of the respondents in the study felt the necessity for connections relevant to their field of work, such as senior change makers, advisors, and experts. 90% of the respondents said that developing specific skills for advancing the initiative and mentoring from senior experts is very important. It is commonly seen that the top-tier leaderships are not always connected with the youth members in the organizations in a regular and systematic manner. It is pertinent to address this communication gap and facilitate intergenerational dialogue, mentoring, and capacity building exercises in order to facilitate youth contribution to activities and decision making within the organization in an informed and comprehensive way. When young people are given the opportunity to stand for what they believe in and understand that their voices can foster positive change in the world, especially when equipped with knowledge, opportunities, and tools to undertake proactive initiatives to address challenges faced by our world, they can stand for their beliefs and causes with courage, pride, and ability. One such young leader is Irene Nagudi, who plans to educate over 200 young children in small-scale gardening activities through her Kitcheny Gardeners project in Uganda. Irene's project teaches young children about nutrition and gardening, helping them understand the positive effect of biodiversity on climate change and how their actions help create a more sustainable future. As an environmental scientist, Irene and her team develop and disseminate technical information in an accessible way. This way, young children are able to improve their knowledge of nutrition, understand the importance of green spaces in climate action, and learn the basics of setting up and looking after a garden from an early age. As the youth, we have the ingenuity, the potential, and the capacity to make meaningful change happen for ourselves, for our communities, and for the world at large. I now hand over to my colleague, Dr. Guho Majumdar, to present before you the general recommendations in this position paper.
Thank you, Ayushi. The crux of the matter, what did we come to after the various rounds of consultations and deliberations, is encapsulated in two categories. One is that of the general recommendations, and the other is that of more specific recommendations that we have come to. So let me begin with the first couple of recommendations that we have. So the first recommendation is that of ample space, opportunity, and support being given to pursue the interests of young people within organizations, as we believe, and we believe so very strongly, that they are best placed to determine the interests of the youth. There are various instances where there is an intervention from various other stakeholders, and we believe that may not be for the best interests of the youth per se. The second recommendation is related to the first one, but it is more specific in terms of saying that the spaces must be, there are certain spaces that must be created to enable them to proactively discuss, initiate actions to contribute towards the aim of the respective organizations, them being the youth members of the various organizations as such. Now, I would like to elucidate or elaborate on this with an example. The example that I would like to look into is that of the Accountability Incubator Program, which is run by the Accountability Lab Nepal, and that aims to support youth innovations in the field of accountability and integrity. It taps into innovation by youth as a means to strengthen civil society actors to hold governments accountable. What is important here is the mentoring, the training and knowledge building, the network building, and media outreach that is given to various young accountapreneurs. To give you an example of a person who has benefited from this, Brabim Kumar, who is an accountapreneur, gives us a perspective on the incubator, saying that the opportunity that he had from meeting like-minded people and having a platform for discussion helped him in attaining a number of things that he has done over the years, including managing one of the largest earthquake relief initiatives in Nepal. He has held leadership roles in Equal Access Nepal and has worked with the UNICEF Nepal and UN Peacekeeping Mission in South Sudan. So the whole idea of there being a space, a place where like-minded youth can come together has really benefited Brabim Kumar among various other accountapreneurs in this organization. The next two recommendations relate to specifying at greater length about the interests, tendencies, and objectives, mentioning that the recognition of the youth as individuals and members of a distinct community with their own specific interests, objectives, and tendencies must be provided to the young people. And in all of this, I think I started with this point in one of the slides previous, the whole idea of non-tokenism, the whole idea of non-tokenistic leadership and representation opportunities for youth members, particularly at the very highest levels of the organization structure, is very important and in fact essential, as we put it in our general recommendation number 4. For this, I would like to highlight this with a certain example from North Sinai, where we are seeing a new culture and cycle of youth civic participation and volunteerism, thanks to USAID and El Gora Community Development Association. It has helped in building trust among the youth and local community leaders, especially the government of Egypt officials and tribal decision makers. And the point to highlight here is that historically, the youth have been excluded from certain positions of power and responsibility in this specific context. And this cycle of youth civic participation has broken through and facilitated that the youth are more involved therein. And there has been a fresh surge in promotion of youth leadership and social accountability, enabling the young people to design creative solutions when it comes to crisis management and welfare. And this has given the youth the opportunity to become key interlocutors between local officials and their communities. The next 2 examples are not quite from social movements and organizations, but it reflects what happens when we do give the youth a non-tokenistic leadership position at the very highest levels of governance and administration. The first example is that of Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's initiative, the Youth Council, which is an initiative that provides a platform for diverse group of youth to offer advice, both in person and online. The key bit here is that it is not only for issues that concern the youth, but also more broader issues that relate to, let's say, the economy and climate policy that are looked upon in the Youth Council. In many Norwegian municipalities, there are these children and young people's municipal councils, which comprise of 6 representatives or members in all, with 2 representatives each from primary, lower, and secondary school levels. And the priority is given for funding proposals and different aspects which are to be covered for those levels of education. And they have also liaised with various local politicians who have responded with concrete actions. So you see that these are 2 examples where when the youth have been given the responsibility and the inclusive kind of decision-making opportunities, they have delivered. The last example in this set of case studies that I would like to highlight is that of the Latino Health Access, which is a community-based organization which looks at improving the lives and well-being, particularly the health aspect of immigrant families in California, particularly in Santa Ana. From 1995 to 2000, the organization hired and trained 12 at-risk youth to become change agents. And they did various activities like sharing and describing local life experiences, reporting to residents, and stimulating dialogue. This increased to 120 additional young people, and eventually it reached out to 2,000 community residents, 20% of whom were adults. There were some major problems that were found, one of them being alcohol abuse, which they recognized as one of the major problems in the community. And they tried to bridge, and use the framework given by the Latino Health Access to attain various resources and decision-making processes. And they also had various activities for information dissemination and awareness building. They developed community outreach activities and mobilized residents. The key finding from this entire exercise was that with the inclusion of the youth, the number of residents who responded to these activities more than doubled, which is a significant change. Also, the youth themselves reported that the importance of becoming leaders in the school or in the community had increased. So the awareness within the youth community had increased beyond and besides the positive effect it had on the respondents and the people for whom this organization was working for. The third and the fourth, the fifth and the sixth recommendations have to do more with what is necessary to enable the youth to make tangible contributions. And we feel that some of the things that are very, very important are that we should have specific responsibilities, clear communication channels, and awareness building exercises that must be prioritized to enable the youth to make tangible contributions within the organization. The sixth one is connected, but slightly goes beyond the ambit of the fifth recommendation, is that of modularity and a decentralized engagement process of the organizational leadership with the youth members. And we feel that that will encourage their involvement and participation. To make this more clear, I would like to go into this example of a case study of GTZ Argentina, which is a participatory budgeting process or a proposal that had been brought forth in a local municipality of Rosaria in Argentina. They had engaged youth from 6 districts in various democratic processes, and it had started with a funding by GTZ, which is German Technical Cooperation. What I would like to highlight here is the clear delineation and definition of the various processes and the channels whereby one could go ahead and attain certain key objectives that we had in this particular case. Those being that of identifying neighborhood priorities, having various meetings for being clear about as to what the organization wants at various points during the process. They also had various voting processes within district assemblies that they engaged with. And they also looked at non-youth specific participatory budgeting processes. And the results were amazing. The results included that 3,500 young people were involved by 2008. They were inspiring new youth projects in adult participatory budgeting processes as well. And the linking of youth groups and the networking thereof from different areas within Argentina was very important, especially for the steady scale up of the entire process across the country as such. So this is a prime example where specific responsibilities, clear channels of communication, and awareness building really helped in the organization attaining various goals and objectives that it sought to achieve. This is a very simple idea and model of what are the different processes whereby one can have greater youth participation. So we start with target groups where the youth are looked as beneficiaries. Then we have collaborative, the aspect of the collaborative phase where the youth are regarded as partners before we go towards the youth initiators, and thereof we have the youth as leaders. And in all of these, the 3 key elements that I mentioned just a while back are important. While speaking of this, what is also important is the manner in which there has to be a certain decentralization in each of these 3 phases, the 3-lens approach, the 3 phases for youth participation. And that is what brings me neatly to the next point of modularity and a decentralized process for engagement. One of the prime examples for this are the movements for climate justice, especially those of International Youth Climate Movement and Extinction Rebellion, where there is a fairly flat hierarchy. There's a decentralized and typically organized into cohorts and chapters. We have various cohorts and chapters which work across different countries and regions. And they create the space for hundreds and thousands of youth to assume leadership roles. What is important is that they have certain resources that enable the youth, but don't have a one-suit-fits-all kind of a model. So they have various toolkits. They have ways to kind of enable the chapters with tools to lead various protests and strikes. And decentralization, however, is primary and preeminent in all these organizations. One of the prime examples of this is that of the Local Conference of Youth, the LCOY, which is an event under the umbrella of YOUNGO, the official youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. And the key bit here is, because of this process of decentralization and modularity, they have been able to engage more than 30,000 youth, have held about more than 160 plus conferences, and have engaged with youth in more than 100 countries. And the idea here is that there are 3 tiers in which the engagement happens. There is an international, a regional, and a local conference of youth. And thereof, what happens is the local conferences of youth look at those topics which have higher national importance, and the discussions that come thereof are fed into the global COY and subsequently into climate negotiations. So again, we see that the whole idea of modularity and decentralization is very important for the climate justice movement across the world. The 7th and the 8th recommendations, general recommendations, are those around comprehensive mentoring and capacity building. I think it is very, very important to highlight that it is only with comprehensive mentoring and capacity building, as well as coupled with the intergenerational dialogue that David and various other members had mentioned previously, that we can completely harness the potential of the youth in the NGOs. The 8th recommendation has to do with a more bottom-up structure so that the information that comes from activism and advocacy at the grassroots can come through and to the top tiers of the organization. And thereof, we recommend a collaborative spirit within the organization and beyond. So To highlight these aspects, I would like to go through one of the most popular and well-known networks of, which is working towards peace, which is Gen Peace in the Philippines, which is a network of 40 different organizations and individuals committed to the youth-led advocacy for a just and sustainable peace in Philippines. Now, what is very important here, and they look at a number of different fields, including culture and arts, human rights, peace education, and so on. What is crucial in the manner in which they work is the whole idea of capacity building, and for which they have various youth leadership training sessions on peace and human rights. And you can see that there are some pictures here from the workshops in the Philippines. This helps in the youth, building and increasing the capacity, especially with different Muslim, Christian, and indigenous youth organizations, and for them to all come together for a consolidated youth peace advocacy in the Philippines. Right, and the last two recommendations that we have are those of inclusivity and diversity. The last two of the general recommendations that we have are those of inclusivity and diversity, and we feel that those must be encouraged by organizations in their youth membership and leadership. And this is across various different identities, including gender, race, nationality, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and so on. One important aspect here, which we did highlight in our recommendations and the position paper, was that of inclusion of disability rights and disability, the members, any possible youth members who have disability, and how to kind of promote their participation and leadership within the organization. The 10th recommendation is that of there being an need for independence of assessment by the organizations based on distinct conditions in various countries of origin and operation. So this is because we, again, don't believe in a one suit fits all kind of a model. We believe there has to be a decentralization across countries as well and conditions thereof. And I'll quickly go over this example, which I feel is exemplary, is that of the queer and trans Black, indigenous, and people of color, QTBIPOC, which the community is very well represented in Californian youth organizing groups, and they have served, on the forefront of various campaigns, including educational equity, environmental justice, health equity, and so on. One of the key things that comes from discussions with the organizations is that it is the diversity within their demographics, within their constituencies, which has actually spurred a greater advocacy-related kind of activity. It has increased the efficiency and the way in which they represent various issues of general relevance as well. So you can see on the left-hand side, there is a certain demographic division that has been shown for the constituencies in 2019, and you see a race-based, a national status-based, and a sexual orientation-based, division of sorts, and you see a very diverse, constituency as such. What is important here is that they have addressed various gender binary-related challenges. They have looked at addressing homophobia and transphobia. They have also looked at fighting intersectional oppression, with the pursuit of activities including affinity spaces for QTBIPOC to build community and work together in a group with shared identities and experiences. So I think all these 10 general recommendations are various important points which we came to after rounds of consultation. And now I would like to hand it over to Ayushi to go into greater detail on some of these recommendations and how we could possibly go about with them in specific instances and contexts. Ayushi?
Thank you, Mrityunjay. I will now take you through the specific recommendations that have been put forth in this position paper. Specific recommendation number 1, Mrityunjay, will you please change the slides? Specific recommendation number 1, effective and regular dialogue and engagement with and among youth members can be undertaken with the creation of intra-organizational and widely representative youth modules that can conduct regular discussion groups and propose policy and program suggestions to the organizational leadership. Specific recommendation number 2, non-tokenistic leadership positions and specific roles for youth members can be facilitated by ensuring young people have chances to have ownership and leadership over processes, regularly incorporating suggestions and points by the youth leaders in minutes of meetings, policy, and position papers, as well as strategy plans for the organization. To avoid tokenism, roles for the youth must expand beyond being simple representatives. Young people can do more than just have a seat at the table. Extremely narrow roles without the opportunity to make any real or meaningful contributions must be avoided. In his 1997 study, Empowering Children and Young People, Pete Friesder identified 5 degrees of participation to involve children and young people in decision-making. These degrees of participation recognize the contributing presence of adults, or in our case, more senior members and leaders of the organization in relation to participatory activity, and they include assigned but informed, where seniors design the program and have youth volunteers to run it, respecting their views and opinions. Secondly, consulted and informed, where the program is designed and run by seniors upon consultation with the youth. Thirdly, adult-initiated shared decisions with children, where the seniors have the initial idea, but the youth are involved in planning and implementing the same. Fourthly, child-initiated shared decision with adults, where the program is designed by the youth and the youth approach the seniors for advice, suggestions, discussions, and support. And lastly, child-initiated and directed, where young people have the initial idea and decide how the same is to be executed. Moving on, specific recommendation number 3. Simulation exercises, particularly with case studies, can be used to build empathy and give youth an experience taking difficult action steps in real time, while reflection activities can help the youth to personally engage with the organization's work and think more critically and deeply on what they are engaging with. Specific recommendation number 4. A central hub of information and resources relating to the work and decision-making of the organization that is easily accessible to all youth members, online and offline, should be created. Specific recommendation number 5. Opportunities within organizations should be created for capacity building and value addition of youth members with both hard skills such as organizational management and modes of outreach, and soft skills such as communication skills and management of interpersonal conflict. Specific recommendation number 6. Opportunities for youth members and leaders to interact with senior members and leaders in organizations could be in the form of shadowing schemes, mentoring programs, or buddy schemes, especially for mentor-mentees who do not have a big difference in age. A relevant case study is the Lugari Youth Leadership Program by the Willing Hearts Society Canada, which serves as an important example of how transfer of knowledge and skills can help in building youth leadership. The purpose of the Lugari Youth Leadership Program is to empower young girls in leadership by building the foundation and nurturing their life engagement in peace building, good governance, human rights, finances, health, media, entrepreneurship, and community connection. Upon their return home, the participants apply what they have learned to implement projects that serve needs in their communities, becoming catalysts of positive change in the society as peace builders, social innovators, and global citizens. As leaders and peace builders, these girls have a stronger voice and feel empowered to end harmful gender discriminatory practices such as FGM, child marriage, and domestic violence. As a representative of Soroptimist International, I feel proud that my organization has been supporting this program through the Soroptimist International President's Appeal since 2020. Coming to specific recommendation 7, there must be an emphasis on creating opportunities to provide more exposure to young leaders, helping them network and find new and innovative opportunities to express themselves. Specific recommendation number 8, the existing youth leaders within organizations can be encouraged to reach out to their communities through outreach programs to inspire and motivate more young people to join the organization and cause. Specific recommendation number 9, a variety of technologies can also be utilized to spread the word about the work of the organization and engage with the youth beyond the organizational membership. Let us look at this particular case study. The story begins in 2009 with two young activists, Antonio and Corina, who were determined to help young people in Central America acquire the skills to face growing inequalities and to shape the leaders that understand the needs of the community and drive actions to work with and for the people. To build a fairer, more sustainable community in Guatemala and El Salvador, one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change, the pair founded Ceres to empower young people. The network has expanded to more 15 to 30-year-olds based on a horizontal management model. Awarded the UNESCO Japan Award for Education for Sustainable Development in 2015, the association uses innovative teaching methods such as project-based learning to prepare young leaders. Their community centers provide access to services, resources, and opportunities relating to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Through eco-social ventures, they also support promising local social and environmental enterprises. Another case study is that of Aissatou, who is the youngest daughter in a family of 5. Born in an impoverished neighborhood in Burkina Faso, Aissatou's parents struggle to make ends meet in a capital city marred by recurrent political upheavals and economic hardships. However, her challenging upbringing was a source of motivation to pursue her dreams. In 2013, she graduated with a bachelor's degree in German studies. She was baffled by the lack of civic engagement among her peers in a social context marked by political divisions and economic disparities. She decided to do something about it. To reach a larger audience, she joined a drama group at the university where she was able to influence her peers better. As she performed with purpose and passion in her theater group, Equal Access International selected her as a part of a program tailored to use participatory theater for conflict mitigation as a way to counter violent extremist narratives in Burkina Faso. I now come to specific recommendation number 10. The prioritization of collaborations between different cross-sections of memberships is recommended, particularly with and among youth members, as well as collaborations with external bodies and organizations such as grassroots youth movements. Specific recommendation number 11. Inclusivity and diversity within an organization can be promoted by ensuring that young people of varying backgrounds and identities are given equal and equitable chances at assuming leadership roles. Specific recommendation number 12. Organizations must promote greater inclusivity for young persons with disabilities and other underrepresented identities or intersection of identities in the work and decision-making of the organizations. Promotion of inclusivity should be followed by annual intersectionality reviews and associated reports to ensure accountability. The last specific recommendation, being number 13, is paid internship programs and international voluntary service for the youth will provide a good opportunity to youth non-members to get acquainted with the fundamentals of the functioning, work, and decision-making of the organization. We consider that student exchange programs are also beneficial in this regard. In the past, although commitments were made to involve the youth in a more tangible sense and more proactively, such promises fell short halfway. We have recently seen how the Generation Equality Forum, which was committed to include young people, fell short of achieving it. Youth activists were invited to participate and share their voices, which was supposed to make the forum a truly intergenerational event. Yes, the young people clearly voiced their experiences and demands to all participants. However, while the opening ceremony involves some great young people, this is where their participation ended. Involving youth is not just a tick box activity. It requires a genuine investment. We believe that the recommendations made in this position paper will facilitate the promotion of youth participation and creation of more spaces for youth leaders in non-governmental organizations and beyond. In this, clarity of roles, access to information and opportunities, inclusivity in approach, capacity building, and mentorship, as well as intergenerational dialogues and a collaborative spirit for functioning within the organization are seen to be primary. We hope that these policy suggestions will be considered and implemented by the organizations, and our position can help build a sustainable tomorrow using synergies with and among young people. We thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gura and Mrs. Kundu, for presenting the paper. Without any further delay, we'll give the floor to our keynote speaker, Mrs. Angela Meno, Director for Policies and Programs of the Social and Human Sciences sector. She has been covering portfolios relating to all programs of the sector, and most notably those relating to ethics and scientific technology, social inclusion, youth, and sports. Her journey in UNESCO began in March 2009. In the past, Mrs. Melo has held a number of different positions in the Mozambican Ministry of Justice, besides having been a criminal prosecutor, representative of the Attorney General for Criminal Matters at the Supreme Court. She was also a member of the International Penal Reform and vice-president of the Mozambican Women Lawyers Association. And interestingly, she has also led the Mozambican Cricket Association as its president. Mrs. Melo, it's a pleasure to have you here, and please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Melissa. A very good morning to all of you from Paris UNESCO headquarters. I would like to salute the UNESCO NGO Liaison Committee for giving the space to young people to express their ideas about how they see their role in major NGOs with a global impact. I congratulate the young people for taking the initiative in leading this process and arriving as such a comprehensive, pertinent, and bold document. I have to say that I listen closely, and I appreciate your youth position paper. Congratulations. This is very much in line with recent global evolutions, as well as the needs of young people. Young people are often consulted or invited by different stakeholders groups, be it in UN, government, the private sector, to contribute to the decision-making process and to the planning of initiatives. At the same time, many young people are also themselves leading initiatives and creating spaces that contribute to communities and societies from the local to the global levels. I recognize this because I hear from your interventions. Recognizing, supporting, and upscaling such initiatives is a win-win strategy for all. Please allow me to also thank the organizers for the invitation extended to UNESCO's youth program at Social and Human Science sector, which has expertise and experience in meaningfully engaging with young people. Since 2014, UNESCO's operational strategy on youth, 2014-2021, recognizes youth as actors and partners and no longer as a mere beneficiaries, aiming to ensure that young women and men are engaged in policies and programs that affect them and lead action to promote peace and sustainable development in their communities. Such focus weighs further maintaining in UNESCO's strategic orientations for 2022-2029, where member states have recognized youth as a priority group in the organization's work. UNESCO trusts in the creative energy and the critical spirit of young women and men, effectively engaging them as change makers, knowledge holders, innovators, and solution drivers in addressing societal challenges. We believe in the rights, in the power that every young woman and man has in this world to drive societies forward. We therefore apply cutting-edge approaches and programs that contribute to shaping and enabling ecosystems for meaningful, effective, and sustainable youth engagement. As we start with ourselves within UNESCO, our aim here is to engage with youth as a partners in co-shaping and co-delivering UNESCO's own work. This means developing lasting collaborative relations at different levels and with different groupings, profiles of youth from local to global levels. In designing and delivering our own work, we strive to engage youth at all levels, from the global to local, both at strategic and programmatic level, and at different stages of the program cycle. To be able to do this, UNESCO staff capacities are being developed on how to meaningfully engage youth in the planning and delivering UNESCO's work. This is also, I hear from you, this is a part of your recommendation. So this is a suggestion I offer. So far, we have trained more than 350 staff from the DG and ADG to program specialists and consultants from headquarters in the field. DDG means the Deputy Director General and Assistant Director Generals. This is based on a cutting-edge tool that has at the time been adopted and applied by other agencies and youth-relevant agency network within the UN system. The UNESCO Youth Forum, for example, we just held weeks ago, is a formal engagement mechanism for the whole of the organization. Since 1999, when UNESCO became the only UN agency at the time to implement a youth engagement mechanism, it provides young people with the space to express their ideas, sharing challenges, and propose relevant solutions. These are shared with the UNESCO member states through recommendations presented at the General Conference, helping shape UNESCO's work. I think you can also take advantage and look and compare the recommendations provided by the Youth Forum, 12th Youth Forum, and yours. Probably you can find synergies. And also I saw some common approaches. So this is another opportunity for you to interact with us through the Youth Forum. At the same time, and less formally affiliated with the Young UN Network, Young UNESCO acts as a community channel for young staff advocating for their representation in international decision-making processes, providing career development guidance and sharing knowledge amongst young youth staff. It is also function as an innovation hub within UNESCO, fostering the development and implementation of new ideas and initiatives with the management. Young UNESCO has actively contributed with ideas in UNESCO's strategic transformation process and strategic planning process. This is the Director General high-level intervention with the UNESCO's strategic transformation process. I think you heard this very good document for UNESCO. Also, there's a part concerning youth. In parallel, we are working to consolidate the networks of young people that we work with in order to expand their capacities and connect with their solutions. To give just one example, UNESCO has been supporting the creation and functioning of the UNESCO Global Youth Community, which is an innovative youth platform intended to bring together different youth engagement streams around the world. with a view to facilitating both an horizontal youth-to-youth collaboration through dialogue, experience, and knowledge sharing, co-learning, co-designing, and co-implementing the projects related to the UNESCO's fields of competence, as well as meaningful and long-term youth engagement with UNESCO. While we are getting better and better in engaging with young people, such processes can always be improved and challenges remain. Allow me to highlight two challenges. One major challenge is truly changing the institutional culture to allow for a true partnership with young people. One needs to understand here that it is a long-term process that does not happen overnight. It requires relentless effort. It requires raising awareness of the benefits that young people bring to the missions of our organization with their ideas and solutions. It requires raising such awareness and developing relevant capacities for our staff at all levels, not the least those of management. And it requires an openness to the novel and bold ideas that may sometimes challenge existing processes. I'm glad to see that this is also picked up in your position paper. I thank you so much for that. Another challenge is engaging young people that go beyond our usual youth networks, reaching the unreached, the vulnerable, the marginalized youth, hearing their needs as well as their solutions. This means going to and partnering with the grassroots organizations, opening up our spaces, thinking of novel ways of building bridges and connections. Again, I'm happy to see that your paper proposes solutions to respond to these two as ideas that can be implemented by the relevant NGOs. To conclude, allow me to highlight the threefold benefit of working with and partnering with young people that UNESCO has understood and acts upon. First, it allows for youth themselves and their structures to further develop their capacities. Second, engaging with the youth helps effectively and better identify societal needs and address challenges. And the third, which is also a consequence of all this, it also enhances and improves our organization's work. It helping it stay informed, relevant, appropriate, and responsive. And thank you so much for listening to me. Over to you, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mello, for your keynote speech. Me, myself, working at UNESCO Bangkok at the same department as you are heading, that is Social and Human Science Department. I work with a lot of youth, so it's so nice that UNESCO is working with so many youth at the same time. Now, and thank you so much for staying with us till this long. Now, to carry on with the program today, we would like to call Ms. Nadine Shalif from Scouts. Nadine is a law student in Tunis and a World Scouting Youth Representative. She is an advocate for non-formal education and an active member in the Humanitarian Law and Human Rights Club at her university. She is also a volunteer in a social entrepreneurship component project under the Futures Leader project. A Scout since the age of 6, she is now at the age of 23, a member of the executive board of her National Scout organization. She will share how she sees this document supporting the work of organizations based on the perspective of a young person who works in a global organization. Over to you, Nadine. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Achana. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here today with you celebrating the launch of this position paper on youth and advocacy. First, I want to thank everyone who was behind this very much needed position paper. And I want also to congratulate all the young people around the world and all the NGOs for this important document. You may be wondering why I'm warmly congratulating you. So it's because I believe that such position papers, policies, and resolutions is youth involvement in decision-making processes. I'll share with you how involvement in decision-making happened and still be happening with my NGO, the World Organization of the Scout Movement. I promise that it will be a history class, just a small overview to make it relevant. So since its beginning in 1907, Scouting's mission has always been about supporting the growth and personal development of young people, which implies having them involved in decision-making. This had always been the basis of the youth programs we had, but only in 1969 that the WASM conference adopts a resolution that represents the first institutional push for greater youth involvement, calling for more youth participation in World Scout conferences. Then in 2005, during the 9th World Scout Youth Forum, 6 youth advisors were elected. Their mission was just advisory, but at that time it was revolutionary. In 2011, a framework for a strategy on youth involvement was set to help national Scout organizations improve the educational opportunities available to young people in Scouting and help them access a local, national, and international decision-making positions. And in 2014, the conference adopted 2 policies regarding youth programs and youth involvement. So these 2 policies outlined clear and detailed expectations regarding the involvement of young people in WASM's decision-making processes at all levels and all dimensions. And between 2017 and 2020, 2 separate task forces conducted independent consultations to reimagine youth participation in the World Scout Youth Forum and the World Scout Conference. And last August, we adopted a resolution that guarantees more effective youth participation in decision-making at both World Scout Conference and World Scout Committee. Saying all that, just to highlight that youth involvement is a whole process. It takes time, yeah, but it's a process that needs to start because young people are at the heart of youth organizations, and youth are the most qualified ones to represent other youth and take decisions for them. As you know, Scouting is a non-formal education movement, and from our experience, I think one of the most important keys to achieving youth involvement in the decision-making processes is upskilling youth and creating more inclusive spaces for them. So integrating us as young people in decision-making processes is one of our rights, and it makes the process fairer. So everyone will feel represented in the decisions, especially when there is space for deliberations. And I think that this position paper will consolidate the process that we already started in Scouting. And also, I think that it represents a practical guide for NGOs to make decision-making positions more accessible for young people. The general and specific recommendations are in point, and this solid document imagines the whole process and sets the appropriate and feasible mechanisms. I want to be honest with you. It's logical if the change generates a sort of resistance. I think it's normal and should be expected if it won't happen, and I hope that it won't happen. So that's why change needs planning and has to be assorted with dialogue. In Scouting, we say that our movement is a youth movement for youth, led by youth and supported by adults. And I think youth organizations can get inspired by this strong logic that creates cohesion inside our movement. I believe that intergenerational dialogue is a key to ensuring that our organizations keep on moving and also to ensure positive continuity inside organizations. So by youth involvement, we don't want disruption, we want continuity and growth. Also from our experience, I can say that internal advocacy with intergenerational dialogue led us to fluid evolution. and the process was pacific since all generations are now convinced with youth power, and slowly everyone is understanding that it's not about conflict over positions, but it's more about asking for participatory processes. In every NGO, everyone has its place, and success is cooperation, dialogue, mutual support, fair representation, and also belief in youth power. So we young people, when provided with the necessary skills, and when unequal barriers are removed from in front of us, we can effectively contribute to our NGO's growth. So let's trust the youth involvement in decision-making processes, and let's together make this position paper our pledge to more performant and impactful NGOs serving peoples and communities. And on the end, I want to thank you for this space, and I hope that our experience in youth involvement as a movement encourage you to start your own processes. So are you up to the pledge? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nadine. It was really nice to hear you speak. Even me, being a slightly older than you, still I had inspiration from you by listening to you speak. So being youth, we sure want opportunity for growth and growth itself. Now we are almost at the end of our program, and for that, we would like to call Thais, focal point on youth at the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee, for her closing remarks. Over to you, Thais.
Thank you so much, Ashiana. Thank you everyone for being here on this event today, where we are launching this document. I would like to personally thank Ms. Mello and also Nadine for their contributions. This has been a long process. It started in the beginning of the year when we started the new mandate of the NGO's Liaison Committee with UNESCO. And it was a long process, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for every one of the young people who are here today. So as Davide said in the beginning, it was a safe space for us youth to come together and start talking about what is it that we needed. And it's only working together that we could have this position paper to integrate into intergenerational dialogue. So this is something that will happen in every organization, that we hope that all the organizations who have a partnership with UNESCO and those who also don't have will be able to engage with this position paper, will be able to access it, and not only have being like one more paper, one more document on the internet, right? There is clear calls that we can implement in our organizations, that we can acknowledge the power that youth have. So I would like to thank Miritunjai, who took the lead in organizing all this event and also drafting the beginning of the paper, and then everyone who collectively contributed to making this happen. So thank you for every one of you, the MCs that we have here today, and as we already mentioned several times, the backstage. So a huge thank you. I've worked in the past in other moments with young people, and I don't stop to being happy with what we can achieve together as young people, our motivations, how we engage truly. And even though we are all volunteers here, it doesn't mean that the work is less serious, because we're really committed to making everyone working together of all generations and using the power of youth that exists but sometimes is neglected. So thank you very much for everyone for being here today. And congrats to all of us for launching this great position paper on youth.
Thank you, Thais. Yeah, I would like to add myself to these greetings, because there's always time for being grateful. So we would like to thank you all for being part of this event. I think that this moment only made sense if we were doing it together. So it will not have been possible without your presence. And we also want to thank all the members of NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee for their support to make this event so successful. And then last, we want to give a special thanks to this amazing team of young leaders and representatives because their active contribution, our active contribution in the preparation of this event was invaluable. Mitunjoy, Ayushi, Thais, Alexander, Julia, Jasmine, Ruxandra, Ayashana, Clifton, Jennifer, Fabiola, Leticia, Martawin, and Lazar. Thank you so much. And we thank NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee and the voice of Davide Grosso for their unconditional support in this whole process. Finally, thanks to all of you again for joining us. Remember that now we would like to have this gathering with all of you representing young people that are representing an NGO in official partnership to join us in this Gather Town space. We will all be there so we can join, chat a little bit. You have received the instructions by email, and if not, remember that you can always write an email to ngo.unesco.org. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye from here. Let us all go into the Gather Town.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.